Someday it may be illegal to make your own wine at home because it turns out like everything seems like it's becoming illegal. In fact, actually, one of my favorite books out there is Everything I Want to Do is Illegal by Jill Salatin. Pick it up if you get a chance. If you want to support the show and be an extremist, but don't go to federal prison, AllisonWinePromo.com is where it's at. You can get extremist altitude wines. Be an extremist, stay in your grandma's basement, safe. And you don't have to make it yourself and worry about the ATF come storming in and taking your wine. We have extremist altitude wines from Argentina, extremist altitude wines from France, Italy, Spain, all kinds of amazing places, hand-picked grapes, natural fermentation, old world vineyards, some of the highest vineyards in the world, some of the oldest vineyards in the world. It's a great way to support the channel. You're going to get 6 bottles of wine every 3 months. So you're signing up for a club instead of just buying a couple glasses or a couple of bottles of wine, and we're all going to be drinking the same thing. They switch out to the same bottles that we're going to be all drinking together. And you're going to be hearing from the guy who's like the extremist wine hunter around the world. Diego, he's going to be on. I already interviewed him, waiting to release the video until we get a few more signups for the membership. So again, AllisonWinePromo.com. Thanks for everybody who's already signed up. Can't wait to see you there. Today we're talking about the Second Amendment in Colorado. So I have some very interesting guests here to start us off. Mike Rausch has been on before. He's a former TV news director, also a Colorado citizen. And Ava Flanell is, well, I'm just going to call you a gun expert. You're also the owner of Elite Firearms and Training. And you've been, really, I think it wouldn't be wrong to call you a political activist for gun rights in Colorado. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's go first to what we're even talking about. I'll pull up this graphic and let's just run people through some of what you guys are looking at or what your legislature has been considering. What are the first one here? Assault weapons ban. Who wants to go first?
I'll just give us the overview. I mean, this year the legislature in Colorado, dominated now by the Democrat Party, all levels of the state actually, decided to unleash a horde of anti-gun bills through the legislature. And since they have a majority in both the House and the Senate, it makes it relatively easy for them to pass them. So what we wanted to do was, for people unaware, and the bigger picture too, is the national media pretty much ignored what was going on in Colorado. A number of years ago, was it 10 years ago, there was a big story when the Colorado legislature passed a magazine limit bill, and that was a big deal. And there was actually a recall of 2 members of the legislature. But since then, there hasn't been a whole lot, except last year there were a few bills they passed, you know, expanding the red flag law, raising the age to purchase to 21, and there were a few other things. But this year was the big year. And from a media standpoint, that's kind of where I'm coming from and how the media handled this, which was really a big deal. But the media tended to play it as just an average story and really failed to cover the big picture and what was really going on in the legislature with the Democrats when it comes to restricting the rights of people who believe the Second Amendment is an important thing. And we start there. And Ava,
let me, Mike, real fast before you go on.
Right.
Let me ask Ava, when it comes to your viewing of media coverage as somebody who's not in the media, obviously Mike and I were formerly in TV news. What do you think about the terminology that's often used? Like we have here in quotes, Mike put this together, assault weapons ban. So like you hear people just saying this colloquially in the legislature, or people saying on the news, they don't really know what that means. Does it even mean anything? I mean, it just means big gun. I mean, what? So I'm just curious what, starting out, can we talk about not just this specifically, this bill specifically, but how it's discussed? And let's take the term assault weapons and how that affects the way that gun politics works in Colorado.
Yeah, so I would say this was probably the biggest misconception when media did cover it because of their terminology with assault weapons. And typically, in previous bills that we've seen, not here in Colorado, but I guess throughout the United States, a lot of people would refer to assault weapon as like maybe an AR or an AK. And so the media was kind of running with that and saying that, that Colorado wanted to ban assault weapons. The problem is there was such a broad description of what an assault weapons bill, or I'm sorry, what an assault weapons was. So it essentially was anything with a detachable magazine that was semi-auto, that had a barrel shroud, muzzle brake, threaded barrel, adjustable stock. I mean, all of these features that we all know doesn't increase lethality, but it essentially, because that, that description was so broad, we ultimately decided that it was about 80% of firearms, and that's handguns, shotguns, and rifles. So we weren't just talking about, what most people would think about as like an assault weapon, which is, most people would think AR, AK, which even then, you could argue is not an assault weapon. But what I've noticed is the media failed to describe what an assault weapon was, or what the bill was describing and how it would affect almost 80% of all semi-automatic pistols out there.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
the media just broad brushed
Okay.
it. There was really no detail in any of the coverage as to what this bill would really do. Ultimately, it was dropped when it got to the Senate, but it did pass the House.
Uh-huh. And maybe that's just a good place to throw in real fast, since Mike brought up and Ava talked about the terminology using just the broad brush. Mike, can you, I know you've done this before, explain to people how much the average reporter knows about guns?
I made a graphic on this if you if you could pull it up, but I could just read through it.
Not this one. Let me find the other one. Here.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so if we want to go through this, Ava experienced all this, so I'm probably telling you what you don't already know, and a lot of people watching this video say, "Oh yeah, I knew all that," but having lived within the media and many newsrooms across the country and dealt with, you name it, national, everybody, I think my descriptions here are pretty accurate. First off, most reporters have little knowledge of the subject at all, right? And secondly, they don't care about gun rights. Thirdly, they know little, if anything, about the Bill of Rights or the Constitution. And then they think generally that firearm restrictions are a good idea. So in your average newsroom, there's no debate, there's no interest, just, yeah, guns are bad. And so that's the track that gets followed whenever they're assigned to a story, or when a story idea gets discussed in the editorial meetings that every newsroom has. To continue on my list, most reporters, news managers have never fired a gun, or do they associate with anyone who is a gun owner? So they never hear any conversations about, the value of the Second Amendment. Certainly, it's a controversial issue. People have their own opinions, and I think, people find their own way to it one way or another. But in your average newsroom, it doesn't get discussed at all. Your average media person has no knowledge of recent Supreme Court decisions, starting in 2008 with Heller and then McDonald, and most recently the Bruin case. They have no knowledge of that. If you would say the Bruin case, they go, what, Bruin? What, the hockey team? I don't know. And then most are happy to cast anti-gun groups' talking points as fact, right? So anyone who follows the Second Amendment issue will often see the media without question, fundamentally parrot the talking points from every town and any anti-gun group. They are not questioned at all. But if it's a gun group, they certainly are immediately questioned, right? It's a right-wing gun group, that's going to be attached to it. When those who are opposed to gun rights, well, they're just, average, people with desire for common sense gun control. So one thing we've talked about the media in the past, generally speaking, media people live in a hive, and it's a hive of the same. They all think the same. They came from the backgrounds. Most are not willing to question anything. Now, that's not to say that covering the gun issue isn't challenging. It certainly can be, and covering a legislature can be incredibly challenging. I covered the legislature when I was a reporter in Nashville on a regular basis. But the bigger thing is the gun issue just isn't a big deal in any newsroom. There's no understanding that it is a big deal, that it is an important story, that it's more important than most stories out there. Well, tax cuts, that would be big, obviously. So the media just kind of plays it along as, well, here we go. Here's another story. Go over there and do the best you can.
And
That'd
before you get into the Colorado media specifically, Ava, does that ring true for you as somebody who's been interviewed by the media before? Do you find that your story, when reporters ask you questions about your beliefs about the Second Amendment or about guns, that they get the story correct? Yeah, I'm just curious, like, as somebody who has been on the other side of the camera from me, for instance, what do you think about what Mike just said?
I think he's absolutely correct. There was very few news sources that actually did a good job of reporting. The best was actually Fox News, believe it or not, and that's because I wrote out all of my answers, and they published pretty much all of my answers. They did a pretty good job. I think I sent you guys that link, and then I noticed a lot of other sources, or I'm sorry, a lot of other news sources read that segment, and then they kind of regurgitated that, which kind of helped to a degree, but other than that, there really wasn't, there really wasn't a lot of fact-based media coverage, and and it's unfortunate because a lot of the people that do interview me, they have no idea typically what they're talking about, and it's really unfortunate.
Since you brought that up, yeah, this is the article, and I did post it on AllisonMorrow.locals.com. It's a great way to support my work as well. It's $5 a month, and you get to put in questions ahead of time for the interviews. So there are a lot of questions that came in for both Mike and Ava. We're going to get to in a second. In the article, you mentioned why people should care about what's happening in Colorado, and I think we should maybe set the scene for that too, since we're going to go into the legislation specifically, because it's like, I don't live in Colorado. Why should I care about what's happening in Colorado? So Ava, what could you explain to people what you said here, and then if you have any further thoughts on that before we get into what's happening there, like why should we even care about you guys there in Colorado? I live in Florida; it's constitutional carry. I think I'm fine, right?
No, so
Yeah, you're good.
essentially right now is they're using these bills as a blueprint, and they're trying to pass it at a local level. They realize that they can't pass it at a federal level. That's going to be a little bit more difficult. So they're targeting all of these states specifically. And Colorado, for example, used to be an extremely red state, and now it's blue. So I feel pretty confident saying that no state is safe. This is definitely spreading like a disease. It's kind of, it's like a cancer that's spreading. And if we don't stop it, it's going to spread throughout the United States. So I think it's in everyone, it's everyone's, everyone should care. And I was fortunate enough to have a lot of help from like outside states where they realized like I finally got to them, and they were contacting representatives and senators as well. But then there was a lot of other people in Colorado that were like, whatever, if it passes, I'm just going to move. And I've told so many people that if you move to another state, let's say you move to Texas, you might buy yourself a few years, but ultimately, if we're not going to stop this, it's going to spread from state to state.
Just want to let everybody know you can send me real mail. I got a nice thank you note from Chip and Sherry in my old hometown of Seattle, Washington. Hello, Allison. You and the producers made our day. That is because we will send you artwork if you send me some mail and help support the show. We have been working with both the producer, who is now the executive producer, she's 4, and the associate producer is 20 months, I think. Anyway, they're getting really good at crayons and the markers and the glue and stuff. Try not to use it on each other. This is a great way to get their energy out. We will send you some artwork. So thanks to Chip and Sherry. They say, thank you for the sweet card. We'll enjoy displaying it among our other original art pieces. It's so fun to know you and your family. So thank you to everybody who sends me mail. Also, you're watching this and you're like, you know what? I've been eating a lot of donuts as I've been worrying about firearms in Colorado. And I could just tell my liver is not handling it well. You need to go to getliverhelp.com/Allison. This is a great formula. Is put together by naturopathic and allopathic physicians. Let me read you the ingredient list. Turmeric, bioperine, which is black pepper, beet, dandelion, milk thistle, artichoke extract, ginger, alfalfa, L-cysteine, glycine, vitamin D3. You get a free bottle of omega-3s, omega supplement with it. And it's a great way to support the work as well. It's a totally natural formulation. If you are on like high carb, high processed foods, you're trying to get off of it. You have fibromyalgia, you're tired a lot, you feel like you got to take an afternoon nap a lot, you maybe are exposed to aluminum because you drink out of cans, or you just breathe the air around you. This is just a great way to do one little liver detox, give your liver a boost, and support the show at the same time.